The history of cinema starts in 1896 with L'arrivée d'un train en gare de la Ciotat, directed by the Lumière brothers. Starting from that moment, motion pictures were presented to the public as stories that told through images a society's values, habits, and needs, succeeding on touching viewers' hearts. Movies are composed of a complex language that comes from the cohesion of words and gestures. Therefore, it is composed of a visual code, a sound code, and a verbal code. The export and therefore the understanding of movies in foreign countries became a problem when motion pictures began to talk in 1926 with Don Juan and in 1927 with The Jet Singer with Al Jolson and directed by Alan Crosland. At first, American producers decided to realize several versions of the same movie. Actors had to perform their lines in different languages in order to make the foreign public understand the motion pictures. In some cases, this option resulted in a positive effect on the public, as for Sam Laurel and Oliver Hardy, that were even funnier while trying to speak Italian with their accents. Shortly after, 20th Century Fox became the first film studio to experiment the dubbing technique. This system consisted in replacing the original dialogues with localized recordings and allowed to save lots of money and time with a better final result. The first movie to be entirely dubbed was The Big House, directed by George W. Hill in 1930 and produced by the American film studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. At the beginning, sound movies were dubbed in the production country, but due to the accent and dialect inflection of dubbers that appeared as strangers to the public, producers decided to dub movies directly in the distribution country. Fox relied on Louis Loeffler to experiment the dubbing system in Italy, while Paramount created its own studio in France at Joinville. In just a couple of years, some dubbing studios were also founded in Italy. One of those was Cines Pittaluga in 1929, which had a fundamental role in the dubbing history. Furthermore, motion picture studios decided to choose adapters and actors that talked a proper Italian and that came indeed from the theatrical world. That was the beginning, therefore, of the golden age of Italian dubbing. Dubbing is a fundamental method to the exportation of a movie in foreign countries. The dubbing procedure consists in the substitution of the original dialogues with localized dialogues. The actors' lines are translated and adapted according to the meaning of the original work, with the aim to recreate the rhythm, the acting, the gestures, and the labial movement of the actors. As a result, the translated dialogues are performed by dubbers, which are professional actors able to give to the public the illusion that the characters are actually playing the spectator's language. The adapter dialogist is the first and most important figure of dubbing that must prepare the adapted dialogues. This professional figure must carefully analyze the original dialogue and the audiovisual support, and thanks to his/her wide knowledge of both the source and the target language, he/she is able to translate and adapt in visual, rhythmic, and labial sync the movie's dialogue in the language of the distribution country. The adapter puts him or herself in the shoes of the spectator while trying to recreate in the most accurate way all the little dialogue's details that are able to infuse in the spectator certain emotions, thanks to his/her sensibility and his/her knowledge of cultures. On the script, the adapter will put some indication that will help the dubber to understand the context of the scene and how to better perform the line, in addition to the dubbing director's indications. I decided to analyze 2 motion pictures that presented some problems during their adaptation in another language. First of all, Trainspotting, a movie directed by Danny Boyle in 1996. The plot is based on a novel written by Irvine Welsh and narrates the life of a group of friends and their decision of not choosing, that is to say, remaining at the borders of conventional society with their view blurred by heroin instead of living a mediocre life. The title of the movie itself, it literally means the practice of watching trains that pass by, an activity that started at the beginning of the 19th century that represents the character's indecision between looking at life that goes by while being on heroin or living it fully. Besides the topics analyzed in the movie, the actor's Scottish accent is an interesting peculiarity that becomes a problem even in countries such as the United States. In fact, the actors themselves had to redub the movie softening the accent in order to make it understandable to the American audience. Since it's not possible to transpose the Scottish accent in the Italian version, the dialogists focused on their way of talking, the slang and all the lexical terms that could transmit the movie's atmosphere to the spectator. The second motion picture that I took into analysis is La Haine, a black and white French movie written and directed by Mathieu Kassovitz in 1995. The movie is set in the Parisian banlieue and it's inspired by the real murder of a 17-year-old Irish boy by a police officer. The choice of representing Paris without colors and therefore without hope puts into evidence the dualism of society between black and white, between the suburbs and the city, and between the police and the civilians. The main characters talk in verlan, a typical jargon of outlying districts in Paris that consists in the inversion of the syllables of a word in order to create a new one. The word verlan itself comes from the syllables inversion of the word l'envers, which means the reverse. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to find a correct transposition in Italian since there aren't any words that are able to maintain the linguistic originality. Translators often use words that come from the most common dialects that in fact aren't very loyal to the original dialogue. Therefore, their translation mostly depends on the translator's ability to find effective solutions. When it comes to Chinese movies instead, the main challenge for the adapters is linked to cultural differences. In fact, Chinese culture, unlike the Western one, focuses on the fact that man is part of nature. The Chinese culture often uses characters with symbolical meanings, such as the Chinese character Long, that indicates the ancient imperial power and that has become the synonym of virtue and dignity. This character stands for the English word dragon, a legendary monster that represents evil. This difference was a problem during the translation of the Chinese movie Wu Long, literally Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The Western audience wouldn't understand the meaning if the title was literally translated. For this reason, the term hidden dragon was changed into roaring lion, because they both represented dignity and wildness in order to transpose in an effective way the concept of the dangerous martial art expressed in the original version. In conclusion, nowadays the role of dubbing and adaptation is becoming more and more important in the film industry, and it's essential in order to achieve a cultural exchange that aims at improving ourselves, appreciating differences, and diminishing divisions between people.